Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to this week's live. You will know if you've been following the posts from last week that I had last week off, so I've just returned back from holiday, which always means you're a little bit brighter and fresher and renewed as a result. And last week was great because I got to really spend some time by myself, for myself, and do the things that I guess holidays are meant to be about. So I was on a yoga retreat in Australia for a while, and then I came back to New Zealand and had my annual meditation retreat, a silent weekend up in the Ruahine Ranges with a group of Buddhist nuns and monks that I actually learned to meditate with, about 7 or 8 years ago now, I think, when I very first came to New Zealand in Palmerston North. At the local Buddhist centre there. So it's always special for me to catch up with these people, and a special opportunity to spend the weekend in silence, but to also spend the weekend calming my mind. This is something, particularly with this month being Mental Health Awareness Week, this is something in terms of mental health and calm and mindset that is kind of top of mind at the moment for me, and it's a lot of the content that I'm pulling together for a lot of workshops that I'm running this month, especially around Mental Health Awareness Week. And it's really interesting when we talk about our mental health and mindset and the power of our mind, because we so often don't give it the priority it needs. We don't pay it the attention it deserves. When you look at what we do for our physical body, our physical health and wellness, we're obsessed with going to the gym, working out, having our hair cut, doing our makeup, having a massage, getting a suntan, all the things we do for our physical wellness. And that's kind of a massive billion-dollar industry. Mental wellness, not so much, but we're catching up. And the reason that is, I guess, is because things like anxiety, depression, stress, burnout, overwhelm, all of these things we hear so much about as kind of an offset of the busy modern lives that we live, are making almost an antidote within mental health so much needed now in our life. So I want to talk a bit about that today, because it is top of mind, but it is so prevalent, because all of the things that I talk about, all of the workshops that I do, the books that I've written, they are about us being our best, and the foundation of that is how we look after ourselves. And of course, whether we're thinking about how well we're performing at work and how clear our mind is, and therefore how calm and centered we are to navigate those relationships, or whether we're looking at our mindset in terms of our potential and whether we have the belief to do the things we set out to do, it all boils down to one thing, and that is our mental wellness. That is how we are here in the mind. And that's the reason the mind is so powerful, because everything begins there. So what we think becomes how we feel, and then that becomes how we act. So there's this kind of chain of events that starts here. And that whole quote that I use a lot, contributed to by Henry Ford, whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. This is so true, because what we put in our mind is the result of our life. So if we think we can't do something, if we don't like who we see in the mirror, that's the stuff that plays out in our lives. That's why the mind is so important. But also the flip side to that, when we talk about busyness, when we talk about overwhelm, when we talk about our lives and our schedules being a bit crazy and overflowing, this also is a mind thing as well. So when we look at whether our mind is foggy and busy and a little bit difficult to navigate and probably a little bit clogged, you feel that sometimes? I know I certainly do, particularly when we're busy and you've got 1,000,001 thoughts running around in your mind, and it's not just your to-do list, it's the practicalities of life, it's your life admin, it's your going over the past and conversations that you've had, things that people have said that you're analysing, and worries about the future, plans for the future, all of that stuff that whirls around in there. We have, on average, 50,000 thoughts a day. That's a huge amount of stuff whirring around in our mind. And if we just let it do that, it does become a little bit like pea soup. And there's a lovely analogy that Buddhists use around meditation. And that is when you've got a muddy water in a puddle, say, and you scoop it up in a glass, what you find at first is that it's really murky. And you leave the glass to settle on a tabletop. And you find that the sediment sinks to the bottom. And then you just have clear water that's left on top. And that's similar to our mind. When we rest it, when we train it, when we're giving it attention, we are letting the sediment settle, and then we're getting that clear space on top. And that's certainly something, it's one of the reasons I keep going back to mindfulness, to meditation. It's one of the things that I'm passionate about. It's the only thing I tell people has saved my sanity and stopped me from being so crazy busy. And that is this ability to calm our thoughts, so that sediment sinks to the bottom so that we have that clear space on top. And what that clear space allows is not just the opportunity for ideas and creations and solving problems and making decisions, that clear mind that we all cultivate and chase after, but it also means I'm more calm and centered as a result. So my reactions, if somebody says something that hurts or upsets me, I've got that space in my mind to be able to process that and monitor my reactions to it, and that awareness that comes with that, as opposed to the heat of the moment reactions that so often come. But what that space also does is that calming effect on our life. All those thoughts, they don't go anywhere, but they dissipate. They settle at the bottom of the glass, a little bit like that sediment. And in our lives where we are so busy and often stressed, anxious, having those thoughts being able to calm and settle somewhat really helps give us peace of mind. And what you often find with that, when you have that peace of mind, when you have that clarity, is that the stuff that matters starts to come up. The stuff that you couldn't previously hear or notice because your mind was just so full and cluttered starts to come to the surface. So that's when we start to have those realizations of, is this friendship serving me? Have I outgrown my job? Do I need to be looking for a new job? What's the meaning of life? All those big questions. This is the stuff that starts to come up to the top, the things that matter to us. So there are so many advantages to having a calm, still mind. Meditation is something I've done for 7 years now, pretty much every day. And it only takes me 5 or 10 minutes. And for those that are new, there's so many apps out there that help you develop a practice. But it doesn't have to be that complicated. Or, meditation is also not for everybody. So if it's something that doesn't resonate, finding time to make the most of those momentary pauses, because we used to have a lot of momentary pauses in our schedule. The times that you're waiting for the bus in the morning, the times that we were waiting for the kettle to boil to make our tea, or waiting for the lift to arrive at our floor at work. All of those times used to be times our mind could reset, refresh, check in, have that pause. But now with our smartphones and the busyness of life, we're doing so many things. Even in those 30-second pauses, we can be doing text messages, checking the news headlines, looking what's on social media, checking the weather forecast, and responding to emails that we've had, all within 30 seconds. And so our mind has got this information overload and this constant connection where we have not prioritized these pauses to using them to reset and rest and train the mind. Something I go into a lot more detail about in my Art of Mindfulness course. And it's something that I'm going to be talking a bit more about as we go through this month, particularly in light of Mental Health Awareness Week. So I'd encourage you to make the most of those pauses because it makes such a difference to our mind. It resets our mind. It's like pushing the reset button on our brain. And of course, when our thoughts calm, when our thoughts subside, what we get is clarity, we get stillness, we get peace, we get calm, all those things that help make us more effective, but also make it a nicer place to be. So our relationships are better, we feel better, we're a little bit happier, more optimistic, but most importantly, we feel more content as well. And it is something I am so passionate about. It's also something you can access through the Thrive Challenge that we're doing this month. So this is free. I'll put the link to the sign up in this live. And it's 5 top tips direct to your inbox and some videos all around resilience, mindset, mindfulness, all this stuff that helps us remain mentally well. That's what the Thrive Challenge is all about. So if you're interested in signing up to have 5 emails into your inbox all around these top tips for your mental well-being, then hit the link that I'll pop in this live and that'll sign you up. With that, there is also a webinar coming up, which is also free this month, 17th of September at lunchtime. It's a Tuesday. And I'll be talking about some of this stuff in more depth in that webinar. So if you're part of the Thrive Challenge, you will automatically get an invite to that webinar and you can register your place. It's free. Tuesday lunchtime on the 17th of September. We've also got the Thrive Day course happening this month at the end of Mental Health Awareness Week. So that's up in Auckland. It's 1 day. It's a small group. So it's a really good opportunity to get some one-on-one coaching in this space and not actually spend the day looking into this stuff, but also making sure you've got a plan that applies to your life, to your circumstances to take away to make a difference, because that is where the rubber hits the road with this stuff. So there's a whole heap of stuff going on this month. Tomorrow I'll be back at the Douse in the hut in Wellington to do the last imposter syndrome workshop for this year, the last public one. So there's a couple of places still left if you're interested in being on that. Hit me a personal message and I'll make sure you get a space on that. It is tomorrow morning. We're kicking off at 9:30. Be finished by lunch. There's food with that as well. That's the last chance to catch imposter syndrome live in the community on a public course this year. And more Thrive content to come, a lot around our mental well-being, particularly in light of Mental Health Awareness Week being later this month. I hope you have a great weekend and I will see you next week. Matiwa.